A certain Hindu ascetic who lay down to rest beside the holy Ganges placed his feet up on a Shiva symbol, a Lingam Yoni, a combined phallus and vulva, symbolizing the union of the god with his spouse. A passing priest observed the man reposing thus and rebuked him. "How can you dare to profane this symbol of God by resting your feet on it?" demanded the priest. The ascetic replied, "Good sir, I am sorry, but will you kindly take my feet and place them where there is no such sacred lingam?" The priest seized the ankles of the ascetic and lifted them to the right. But when he set them down, a phallus sprang from the ground and they rested as before. He moved them again. Another phallus received them. "Ah, I see," said the priest, humbled, and he made obeisance to the reposing saint and went his way. Welcome back. Peace and blessings. May we find inner peace as we continue our chaotic and shared journey through the cosmos. In the previous video, we opened the discussion on the variety of sex symbols in the Krypton and oil rig sequence of Man of Steel, both phallic and yonic, simply to begin providing context for the larger discussion about what they imply for the more general themes of the film. Today we will elaborate on them and place them more precisely in the context of Hindu and Buddhist iconography. In particular, if we look back at the helper robots, Kelex and Kilor, we noted them as having vulvic curves. It is my belief that their specific designs are influenced by the Yonic Foundation of the Shiva Lingam. The Shiva Lingam, or Lingam Yoni, has a number of interpretations, some of them controversial, but from what I've seen, there's a fairly consistent interpretation of it as representing a union or balance between the poles of the dual masculine and feminine cosmic energies. Here we see that the robots indeed share a strong similarity to this iconographic representation of the Yoni. In Man of Steel, the robot displays therefore seem to hint at what is essentially the creative and destructive aspect of the divine feminine. Specific forms are birthed through their yonic doorway, wherein all things manifest from a sort of fluid and formless multiplicity. Note that forms also disintegrate here, so the creation from and return to the cosmic void is wholly represented. It is also true that they resemble the arghya, the ceremonial vessels used to lustrate or purify the Shiva Lingam by pouring holy water upon it. Aside from the yonic structure of the vessel, the association with water is another indicator of the divine feminine. When a priest or devotee offers the deity water from an arghya, while simultaneously chanting a prescriptive sequence of mantras, the water is being vivified, as it were, as the sustenance and grace-giving amniotic fluid of the goddess, discharged through her yoni. We may also note the structural similarity between the arghya and the protective armor worn by Zod and his men, as well as Jor-El. Indeed, when we see Zod much later remove this protective layer before he begins to fly, it can reasonably be interpreted as him emerging from this womb as a snake sheds its slough, or perhaps more relevantly as a butterfly emerges from the cocoon womb as we see him actually ascend and fly only after doing so. This is certainly indicative of a moment of rebirth for Zod. We also discussed the Phantom Zone as shown with an interesting form that alludes to the uterus clearly displaying what appears to be fallopian tube-like extensions pulling in the ship. Contextually, this makes sense as Zod and his crew are being held captive in this womb-like state, later to be reborn only through the destruction of Krypton. Specifically, Zod says they were freed, as a baby is freed from the womb. We emphasize here that the womb can have the preferable aspect of being re-energizing and protective, which it certainly did protect Zod and his men from exploding in the destruction of Krypton, but here it can also become like a prison where one is held confined or captive, something that you need to free yourself from. If we truly believe that this structure is alluding to the uterus, then we may be able to extrapolate other iconography associated with the womb. The inverted triangle is commonly associated with the divine feminine as well. For instance, if we look at the Kali Yantra, or Yoni Yantra, we see at its center an inverted triangle. According to Britannica, yantra, Sanskrit for instrument, is in Tantric Hinduism and Vajrayana, or Tantric Buddhism, a linear diagram used as a support for ritual. In its more elaborate and pictorial form, it is called a mandala. Yantras range from those traced on the ground or on paper and disposed of after the rite, to those etched in stone and metal such as are found in temples. According to ancient symbols, the downward-facing triangle symbolizes the Yoni Yantra, which signifies the mother goddess and female regenerative power. According to traditional art of Nepal, the Yoni Mandala is a representation of the goddesses Devi and Shakti, and it is a symbol of the creative energy that moves through the universe. In Sanskrit, Yoni means source, place of origin, and vagina. In fact, the triangle in the center of the mandala is a depiction of the female genitalia. So we see a lot of basis for associating the inverted triangle with the womb or the feminine. Given this basis of interpretation of the inverted triangle, we can reasonably associate Superman's symbol, which also takes on the general shape of an inverted triangle, as Yonic. This would essentially mean that Superman wears aspects of the divine feminine on his chest. And we should ask, for what purpose? Well, in the movie, the S is said to stand for hope. The S, I believe, is also a play on the idea of sun, hinted at by the yellow behind his emblem. Superman, of course, reaches for the sun to be re-energized. For Superman, the sun is indeed a kind of womb where he may regain his energy. For humanity, the sun can be a sign of hope, where each morning the sun rises and the day begins anew, or even moving from winter to spring, the sun is a hope for the new season, life, and abundance. Further, there may be a play on the word sun, S-U-N, and son, S-O-N, as in child or baby. The S-O-N, son, the baby, is also naturally a symbol of hope. Indeed, having a child at all is inherently an act of hope, faith, a source of inspiration that we may pass the torch to this new life, the redemption of any of our own sins and regrets, the comfort in our own mortality, in the idea that we're passing along life and it will be continued. Jor-El directly connects the newborn son Kal-El to hope, saying he literally held hope in his hands. The connection to the S-O-N sun with the S-U-N sun is shown after Kal-El cries out and the camera pans to Krypton's quote-unquote sun. In this sense, the Superman symbol in Man of Steel is the inverted triangle, representing the womb within which new life and hope springs forth in the form of the sun and the sun. The sun is directly masculine, and the sun is typically regarded as masculine. And so there is this sense of Superman representing a balance between the masculine and feminine cosmic energies. There is another justification for this interpretation that goes back to the Yonic arghya used to pour ceremonial holy water on the Lingam of Shiva. We see there are two forms given here for their design, both being vulvic and associated with water, which in turn is also associated with the feminine, as we discussed. Interestingly, the Superman symbol in Man of Steel has these curves exactly, unlike other Superman S logos. Though an extremely subtle design choice, it is enough in my mind to solidify the Superman symbol in Man of Steel as intentionally pertaining to the feminine womb, a symbol of hope inherent in the idea of rebirth, purification, and renewal. We can also look back at the oil rig sequence, where the oil rig itself was identified as phallic and the water being associated with the feminine amniotic fluid. If this interpretation is true, then we may continue to expand on this in the context of the Lingam Yoni iconography, where the pillar of light, as a lingam of Shiva, penetrates the surrounding yoni of the goddess Shakti. The passive aspects of the feminine juxtaposed and surrounding the penetrative aspect of the masculine pillar, or phallus of fire, in the center. Please note that this idea of combined masculine and cosmic energy embodied in the Shiva Lingam or Lingam Yoni is a very important symbol. It is conveyed in a variety of novel ways throughout Man of Steel that we will examine. In the next videos, we will look at these dualities through the lens of what can confidently be associated with masculine and feminine behavior and psychology. The next video in particular will look at negative aspects of the unrestrained phallus. We will examine a variety of fictional and non-fictional instances of the unrestrained phallus to become aware of the manner in which it ignores and thus disintegrates the foundations of a moral compass.